Um, this year is starting out kind of weird. There's a new spider. New spider. In Australia, it's the sequel to a previous funnel web spider, but more poisonous and scary. That sounds like a joke. This year is going to be weird. 2025 started fast. Normally, years take a bit of hesitation before they start proper, but 2025 started immediately. New squid, Cyclopean had to disappear completely, and now Ethel Cain. Them! See, in late-ish 2024, Ethel Cain made a Tumblr post, later revised Reddit post, about the irony epidemic. I've spoken to Tad myself about the way men in my culture don't really exist. Not that anyone is helping that problem. Men will do anything except go to therapy. Ah, yes, therapy, a notoriously cheap and easy thing to do. I'll get into all of that, but her post really resonated with that, about the way people in her fan base and around don't take anything seriously, constantly painting irony as a glaze to protect themselves. Not against humor or jokes, as she says, I love me a good joke. I love me a good joke. My Bowl of Heaven video was... sorry. My Bowl of Heaven video was me taking the piss while also analyzing the band, because you don't make a band with songs longer than the universe without me laughing. I get what you're saying, but it's still funny to me. Anyway, Kane's post goes off about the joy of feeling and expressing, the joy in life itself, and how frustrating it is that the initial reaction to anything is dismissal and sarcasm. Though I've seen this all before the now, because that's what happens when you encounter horror you can't stop. You break. In response to that, she even made a video about the importance of gay porn, her favorite types of it.
But I have a lot of the doujinshis, I have a lot of the full series, some of them are just like general art books and whatnot, but they're really cool, and I love them. I just think they're really cool, and a lot of my art that I draw is inspired by that era of Tumblr, OC artwork.
As a call or action to the importance of keeping media together, preservation, if you will. The comments are mostly the same sarcasm, but some get the point. Either way, I think we should talk about this. Before I get into this, though, I am listening to Perverts as I write this, so bias, I guess. I have to be honest, I thought that video was funny. Not because I didn't get the point, I do, but because the idea of making a video about favorite types of yaoi is just absurd and funny to me.
Yaoi? And I've been told that I pronounce yaoi wrong, but I don't care.
Because of the cultural context with it being taboo and just talking about it like it's not. I agree ultimately we should preserve gay media. Personally, I'm a fan of furry porn because it isn't real. Either way, I think Cain is correct about the way people don't take anything seriously. We should remember that people are complex and ugly. Why a person decides to shield themselves in irony and safety really depends on their ability to express. A person who stews their whole life in lava can handle turmoil, but most people spend their lives in safe bubbles that only pop every other decade or so. As much as I do get frustrated by people shielding themselves all the time, I get it. Sometimes I do it. Sometimes you just don't want to exist or be aware that you do. It's just that... Let me get into this. I've been meaning to make a video on how pop culture, music analysis, and music analysis in general doesn't get treated that well by both my generation and YouTubers as a whole. Mainly, they focus too much on artificial breakdowns and basic concepts, while also barely touching on the music. It's also very impersonal. They don't really go to the extent of saying, I feel this way, more, I like it and so do others, look at these reviews. They talk about it like Beato, and that's the end of it. I'm fine with critics like Chauncey, Fantanos, Spectrum Pulse, and Medusone because they actually go a lot deeper than I like it because Rate Your Music told me to. They focus on celebrities and vibes, and I just hate that. And I get all these creators do too, but again, music first. And even Medusone is celebrity uber context, but she still goes into the music, which blew my mind.
At least for her first 4 albums, deleting specific words would make the songs more kid-friendly, though Early Morning still has the word ass in it a lot and is clearly about, like, the walk of shame after a hookup. But the censorship on Blackout is absolutely useless.
I'm not perfect either. I've only been making videos for a little over a year, 6 months if you exclude the incident, and I've certainly fallen into the trap myself. My video on bicycles very much filled with this I don't actually care attitude on it, except that video and why it turned out like that had more to do with my own attempt to distance myself from the album for complex reasons I'll go over another time. Where my analysis of Bowl of Heaven also shared this, I still made sure both videos had analysis in them. The Bowl of Heaven video had a point, and a lot of that music is serious, but I goofed off because look at it, listen to it. Where Bicycle is serious and I looped in circles around it because shame and insecurity, that doesn't mean I'm never going to get goofy or goof off or whatever. There's a place for it and there's a place away from it. It's fucking shut up. Societal pressure is a powerful tool in this. In writing, there's a trope called lampshading, which is kind of when you subtly nod to the audience that you're aware of the limits in a medium. Say, the boom mic being covered by a lamp getting uncovered, a fourth wall break, or even a joke about how stories are so much better than real life. Bathos is an offshoot where you attempt to distance yourself from the audience's engagement. Lampshading can enhance the engagement, ironically, where bathos is intended to sever it, by making note of the failure of the medium and making sure the audience doesn't care watching it. It's not automatically a bad trope, but its recent modern usage is atrocious for this. Most people call it Marvel humor, where the movie makes sure the audience knows, don't worry, we're not taking this dumb shit seriously.
My mom, when she was researching spiders right before she died.
Dakota Johnson probably never doing superhero movies again.
The quips, the constant lack of serious moments or breaking of serious moments unless it's trailer fodder or Oscar bait. It's a corporate process too. It makes more money to make sure the audience doesn't know where you're coming from so that they don't have to think about what you're doing, which crosses cultural boundaries and financial boundaries. Nothing is more accessible than not giving a shit. Societal pressures are certainly a piece, though. I've spent my entire life being told by friends and family that my passions and my actual personality is much better when it isn't there. I try to have fun and be myself, and everyone would just prefer I don't. What does that mean? I don't know. I don't tend to be myself around my family much anymore. I just make jokes most of the time because why bother? Irony and absurdism comes out when you have to shield yourself from fear and stagnation. It's when things don't change, so all you can do is laugh the pain away. I spent my entire high school, 4 years, fearful that a school shooting would happen. There were 3 distinct threats and 2 shootings outside that put the school on lockdown. Knowing how many kids around the country were dying from them, it blew my mind to how nothing changed. To which I stopped caring because I eventually realized the problem wouldn't go away. And that's when me and my friends started making jokes because if school shootings aren't worth taking seriously, then nothing is. This mostly happens to every generation that doesn't have it good. Gen X and millennials also have their own forms of irony. The Great Depression generation had their own form of absurdism. Especially millennials who knew their future wouldn't really be better than the strange allure of the almost too perfect 90s, minus the bombings and the constant political corruption. Irony is a reflection of pain, nihilism, and bewilderment. On the next end is post-irony. Take eating a clock is very time-consuming. Does it mean anything? Sure, but it's meant to be as absurd and stupid as possible because it's funny. Then comes meta-irony, where the joke curator gets to decide whether the irony in their own statement is valid for whatever purpose. People associate this with politics, but I associate it with bathos, because it's the moment the joke stops being funny, when the comedian gets to decide whether you're allowed to laugh. It gets annoying. The frustrating thing is that in mainstream culture, these switch around, but below that there are tons of forms of humor, and not one particular one ever gets to mean anything more than the other. However, then comes the problem when the joke is stolen. The sad thing about 90s irony culture is that it got absorbed into corporations being sold back. In a lot of ways, in our hyper-capitalist dystopia, memes have turned into a currency, as depressing as that is. Even trolling is just another way to farm cents. Take how Twitter pays you to spam crap. You can just make money off of that. I see so many videos use soy jacks, troll comics, and memes completely unironically for no other reason than just having a template. Not automatically bad, but you know what I mean. Which isn't really the point of memes, or at least they shouldn't be. For a short time in 2021, the term goon was used among my generation. It refers to people who are compulsive horn dogs, not to be confused with goons conspiring to take down the big bad mouse. But the term is just thrown around like nothing new. The OCs made a song about it. That song is obviously a joke, but at what point is Goon Squad TV a joke? In an unironic context, what are we doing? It becomes a barrier to prevent people from taking you too seriously, so you can sit in the middle of trying and not trying to protect yourself from backlash or attachment. This is probably a piece of the puzzle that there is a financial incentive to take a trend and ride it to the grave. There's a video by Tensei Productions about the death of man, and the meme when a corporation used it because it makes the meme stop having meaning. The inside joke is absolved into the outer stream, and keep in mind that strange context is explored complexly in the video, but the strange context is the point. When it leaves that context, it stops being funny because the joke is gone. That said, the fact we have video essays about memes should show that meme culture is kind of truly dead. Memes still exist, but the attitude is less throw whatever at the wall and see if it blows up, and now monetize it. I hate to be an asshole, again, but I watched Spectrum Pulse twice bitch about how Generation Z misused irony or something.
Or do ironically, they believe unironically, where so much of disaffected cool becomes sour, embittered conservatism or cover for reactionary bullshit. It can become truly nightmarish as the artist who's trying to be taken seriously in that culture. And I've heard the whole, it's just a joke, or we need irony to get through the modern hellscape. And while I'm somewhat sympathetic to the latter, it doesn't escape the actual impact of what you fucking do within the culture, and I got no respect for the former group, mostly because the vast majority of you aren't as funny as you think you are. Now,
He's referring to Twitter trolls using meta-irony and bathos, I think, but it's a little more complicated than that, but I feel like his anger comes from a lot of my generation not giving a shit, possibly his own generation not giving a shit. Now, with all of that aside, I despise these channels. I hate ingenuity so much, and I keep failing to address it because time is a fast-moving banana peel that I keep slipping on. I hate how much people do lean into irony to shield themselves. I hate how often I watch a video and I can tell the person making it doesn't care. I get that it's scary to be honest because people might come after you. However, that'll happen anyway. The internet is shared with billions and billions. We are at the mercy of each other, and some people are just smug losers. I am also not in the mood to argue about algorithms or systems because people are still people. There has never been a period in history where people stopped existing because some old hack got into office and shut all the mailboxes down. The only time I've seen people shut down is when a war is happening. Even then, not as much as you think. Hards Macaulay's A Volta para Vitória is a live album of recordings Macaulay did in churches during Brazil's fascist period, possibly invasion or coup done by the US. It's his live performances where he sings to calm the crowd, telling jokes and whatnot.
Porque é melhor pro mundo. Cante, cante.
That just doesn't happen. My point is that people individually can be amazing, which is why I hate when people try to fit in a crowd that doesn't exist. Cain talks about culture's binary of praise to death or skin to death, where videos on topics are either gush fests or angry beatdowns with little middle. Again, not immune to this. I did have a shit year in 2024, and I spent a lot of that year trying to cheer myself up by talking about my favorite albums and some weird stuff. On that note, I did make a video a while ago about Greta Van Fleet and the complexity of their popularity and why people don't like them, and I did get some backlash, but not a lot. Also, I think if I did the "they're great shut up" or "they're terrible shut up" trick, I would have gotten more pushback, but still the same reaction. And in that situation, why would people be serious? It doesn't matter, and you'll grind someone's gears anyway. Being genuine and breaking down complexity, mean or otherwise, gets people to understand you better. I would prefer more complex analysis, but at the same time, that's hard. At the same time, it's not like I enjoy being treated more and more like I'm insignificant to my fellow man. We live in an age where being human is more important than ever. Succumbing to the noise of the world is pathetic, frankly, and deciding to blend in with the AI and the robots just seems stupid. Why? I do appreciate that Cain's post isn't bitter. It feels empathetic, which is appreciated given a lot of times sourness and sarcasm tends to bleed into genuinity. Which brings me to the final piece. Fear. People are afraid to express themselves alone. I spent a lot of my life a bit alone at times and away from what people believe, and because of that I'm more used to trekking my own path. However, if you've never been there, it's scary. Using familiar imagery or figures, as rare and as empty as they may be, it's always better for someone who desperately needs any kind of affection. As much as I hate the lack of anything in my generation, I see how hard it is to build yourself. Third places are gone, subcultures are really hidden, and the world is red. There isn't really an answer to this, but being dead serious all the time is exhausting. I love absurd humor, and I will never stop loving the Stephen Wright kind of bluntness in it. I hate when it's used as a weapon, but I know too that some people use weapons to protect themselves. There's not really an out to this kind of cultural problem other than carving out the path again. I once heard an analogy on Joe Scott that depression is when you carve out snow in your brain to take familiar paths, and the paths get treaded until it seems like there's no other option anymore. Trying something new or taking mushrooms is like filling the paths in fresh snow to carve new paths. Take honesty as a hard way to take a new path. I don't like a lot of the ways we talk about music, but the irony problem is only one symptom of the way we talk about it, as a product in time when music can be made by anyone and is close to worthless, when everything feels like a crisis. You know what? Here's my first honest impression of Perverts. I listened to Inbred from whenever that came out, and it wasn't really my taste. I wanted to like it more because the imagery of the album covers was really cool, and the kind of music she creates, well, it isn't my thing. Though I've always kept an eye on it because of how interesting it is despite how slow it was. Perverts was described as dark ambient, and being in my taste on this channel, I give it a shot. Perverts is a complicated album composed of long drone and haunting ghostly instruments, samples, and dizzy mixing that aim to discuss the way masturbation and self-love permeates our culture, particularly for women. The repetition in House of Psychotic Woman saying, "I love you," matching the kind of self-healing being distorted by the shame brought on by society, as well as the kind of franticness that comes later in it, in the analogy of how society by and large sees masturbation as a soiled or wasted seed, self-infatuation and indulgence. It's a twisted, ghostly album about the pain of being forced to constantly endure the lies of the world around you, brought upon religion only designed to control. The only way to truly get away is to leave, and the scars of holding everything and all the time remains. The thing is that masturbation is natural and is just a consequence of reproducing that way. It's also that kind of darker angle in which masturbation is seen as sinful and selfish because it doesn't do what's in the Lord's name, to the fact that men doing it is seen as more a sin to remedy, where women are meant to be sexless temptresses free of the sin of man. Women are expected to be constantly damseled by men and themselves. The album leaves you empty and tired, contemplating for the desperate desire for actual love and compassion when it seems it's always held as far away from you as possible. A brutally honest album that requires you to look into its abyss and dig out whatever you scratch out of yourself. Did I like it? Yeah, I loved it. I thought it was a haunting and creative dark ambient album. It is very long, and while not all the time was spent me checking the time, by the latter mark I did start to get impatient. The reason it is an EP is probably because it's meant to be a side project. Cain doesn't normally do this kind of drone. They did it because they like it, because Ethel Cain is cool just like me. Honestly, it's hard to capture because when you put yourself out, there is somebody who will come after you. It's common in a lot of societies that people are expected not to stand out. Even then, we are people. We're not cogs of a system, and we can still be us. Even with the rise of vapid money lust and consumerism, I still do what I do here because I enjoy that connection more than the thrill of money. Money gets me nice sugar drinks and fast food burgers, but I would rather keep living because I want to see my brother and sister again. I want to see my brother and sister get out of the ruts we're all stuck in. I want to see my nephews and nieces mature and grow up. I want to listen to music to feel like someone living because that's what I do. Irony is fine in moderation and sucks in overload. However, like all things, moderation is the best spice of life. Eventually, irony will become annoying and tacky, and genuinity will take over again. Check out the new Spider, though. Crazy.